All right. I never get tired of hearing that. I have to play that in my class every semester. I've been teaching this class for 9 years. I always, feel like this when I share it with them. And they, all of a sudden, their eyes will light up with this piece. So it's really good stuff. But I continue with Isaiah. And Isaiah is also quoted in Matthew where he says, "Behold, a virgin shall be with child and shall bring forth a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel," which being interpreted is God with us. But it's only in Luke that we actually have the scene called the Annunciation, where the angel Gabriel comes to Mary and tells her this news. It's only Luke that writes about this. And so we're going to be looking at some Annunciation paintings here briefly. Annunciation, again, is just this time in the Bible, the first chapter of Luke, where the angel Gabriel is coming to Mary. And I think it's important for you to realize that when painters are painting this scene, they're not like newspaper reporters trying to report on something. I think we tend to look at this and go, oh, it couldn't possibly have been in a building like this, and the angel couldn't possibly have wings like that, and we miss the point when we do that. I think this painting can become a wonderful devotional tool if you put yourself in the mind of the artist. Imagine if you were going to have to paint an Annunciation painting. And you can paint one in your mind anytime you want to. But let's just practice. The kinds of questions the artist would have to do, of course they'd have to read the passage in Luke, but then they would have to start thinking and asking questions like, what was she wearing? What was she doing when the angel interrupted her? Where was she? Was she outside or in some kind of a room? And what did that angel look like? And what about the moment when God comes upon her? What was that like? I think when you ask yourself these questions and you really feel them, you begin to feel that Mary was a real person, not a myth. And when you feel that Mary was real, so was Jesus. And this is what an Annunciation painting can do. Now, this one I picked out of many. This is by Petruccio. This is actually a fresco that's a whole side wall of a chapel. I believe he does it huge so that you, as you're in this chapel, can feel like you're actually inside this scene as a part of it. It's painted in 1501. It hangs in Spello, Italy, in the Bagliona Chapel. It's on. I've got a program for you just so if you're wanting to plan your future vacation and you want to go see the painting, now you know how to find it, or if you want to put it on your screensaver. But just some things to notice about that are typical for Annunciation paintings. Usually Mary, they show her that she's reading the scriptures. They want to show that she has a knowledge of the scriptures. So that's always there. She's always bowing her head, very piously, submissive. Then the angel Gabriel in this painting here is holding lilies and kneeling before her to honor her. The lilies are usually in Annunciation paintings in some way, and they are to symbolize virginal love. So look for that. And he's making this blessing gesture. The thing that's different about this painting is it actually has this pathway that's going back into a garden. The garden is to symbolize heaven, and so this is to symbolize that this is the beginning of this story, and this is the path to heaven, and this is the gate. The church would have been a church that would have, in 1501, been a modern, this was a modern building for them. So this artist isn't even trying to put her in biblical setting. He's wanting people who view this to relate to her in their time. And we're going to be seeing artists doing this throughout the class. And so, they're saying here that Mary is the gate to heaven. When I first heard that, I went, ooh, I'm not sure I like that. But when you think about that Christ came into the world through her womb, I think maybe it's okay. You decide. There's lots of detail in it. And then God is up here in the clouds, and so they're taking this in from Scripture that God came in the clouds at different times. We know he appeared like this. Then there's the light coming in here and the dove. Now, this doesn't happen in Luke, but it happens, of course, at Jesus' baptism, and so they often take that and put that over into the Annunciation scene. So these are pretty common things to look for. This is a Fra Angelico Annunciation painting. It's a little bit different. This would have been something he painted for a monastery cell for the monks to just really meditate on this for a long time. And so he puts this in a setting where you see there's a monk's cell back here, so they can relate to it in that way. Puts more modest clothing on her, but she's still got the scriptures here on her knee, and we still see the light coming in with the dove. And he represents God up here in the relief sculpture in the middle looking down on the scene. The thing that's different about this painting is he includes Adam and Eve in the story and how we all began here. So another thing you need to go and visit. So these are Annunciation. I showed a lot of these in my class I did at church at my congregation, and after we looked at this for a couple of weeks, I had a friend from the class send me an Annunciation painting that she was drawn to. She said, this one I really can relate to. This is John Collier. This is a modern artist. I thought it was just wonderful. It actually has the lilies there, of course, but she's in suburbia. And the thing that my sister was drawn to here was the saddle shoes. She thought that was really... But she's reading a little book, very young. The angel has sort of a modern look to him. Now, of course, I couldn't let her one-up me on this, and so I said, my favorite one, of course, Mary, before the angel comes, is playing the flute. And so this is my Annunciation painting. This is He Qi. It's a Chinese artist. So as I was studying these scenes, I began to really wonder about Mary and why so many artists have been so focused on her. So I want to pause that thought for a minute and tell you about my summer vacation. Last summer, my husband and I were traveling to Charleston, South Carolina, and there was lots of wonderful music and concerts going on there. And every day we would go down the main drag to one thing or another, and we would pass there on the main street a Catholic bookstore. And I was just starting this process. I really had no idea where this was leading me. But I kept kind of looking in this bookstore going, I wonder. I couldn't get the courage to go in. Finally, at the end of the week, I said to my husband, I think I'd like to go in there and see if there's something in there about Mary for me. So I go in and I look for the Mary section of this bookstore, and I quickly find that it's this huge monolith of a section from ceiling to floor, books on devotionals about Mary in there. And I realize I'm completely out of my depth and overwhelmed, and I look around and I think about going out the door. And then I look at my husband and I say, can you disappear for a little while? I want to talk to that nun behind the cash register, and you're cramping my style. So for once, he disappeared into the back of the store. And so I go up to this nun, and very carefully, I feel like I'm approaching some kind of voodoo priestess, And I say very, I don't want to offend you. I say very confidently, I am Protestant. And I would like to know more about Mary. Can you recommend a book on Mary? I don't want to pray to her, though, I said. I want to make that perfectly clear from the outset. So she said, but I said, we don't do much with Mary where I go to church. I don't hear about her very much. I would like to know more. She said, you have Mary at Christmas, though, in the Nativity, don't you? And I said, not really. Not unless I go someplace else. She looked at me and she said, "Oh dear." She took me by the hand over to this huge section. She zeroed right in on this book. Very slim volume by an author named Amy Wielden. I'll share it with you if you want to come up and talk to me afterwards. She said, "You will like this. This will be good. It's very, accessible, and it's very Bible-based." She knew that would be important to me. And we had the most loveliest of conversations then. But it was really exciting. I was anxious to get home and read this book after my vacation, and I learned so many wonderful things from reading this book. I learned how Mary was the first disciple, how in accepting this God's plan for her, she's showing us how to become a disciple. How at the wedding feast she says to the crowd, "Do whatever he tells you to do." And how you're going to see tomorrow, if you get to come back for the Passion, how Mary is standing at the cross. And how I learned how sometimes that's the greatest form of love, is just being present. Well, I felt like I was seeing Mary for the first time. I had been looking at family photo albums where somebody a long time ago had cut Mary out of the family picture. I felt like I was a child from a divorced family and the other guys had gotten custody of Mary. And I think this is what Luke is doing for us in his gospel. He's making sure to include Mary in Jesus' story. He's writing for us and painting for us a baby picture of Jesus.